Hello, this is Will Your Werewolf. I'm carrying on with the vampire series. If you've not done so, you really need to go back and listen to the other episodes in the vampire series. Otherwise, this will not make the greatest of sense. This, I think, will be the longest of my series, and I hope that I'm not boring you with it. But I'm only telling you what happened. There will be cardy things up in the right hand corner of the video so you can find them, and there's going to be a playlist, and please like and subscribe and ding the bell and stuff. That'd be great. And comment if you would, that'd be wonderful, and share it with a friend. Share the stories with a friend. I'd find that wonderfully helpful. Thank you very much. Love you lots. Also, if you're in any cool groups like Werewolf whatever on Facebook or something, please put me in there and let's see if I can build up my following. A brief synopsis of what's happened so far. I am a werewolf and the vampires are trying to kill me. Yeah, trope. I know, vampires versus werewolves. It's slightly different from other werewolf versus vampire shit you've seen or listened to, though. This is no Anne Rice novel. It's definitely not an Underworld film or Blade, which is actually my favourite vampire movie, and definitely got fuck all to do with that Stephenie Meyer's bullshit. Listen to the first 4 of these things, please. I can't be arsed going over it. I was now going to get them, the vampires, that is. It had got to a point where I could not deal with the bastards coming to get me. It was time for me to go get them, and it had come to my attention that I could find the fuckers at an all-you-can-eat buffet night for them. I live in Manchester, and I've done so for a while. I spent too much of the last story telling you about it, so I won't hark on. My servant Malcolm knew where the fanged fuckers would be on Friday due to his interest in kinky stuff. He had told us about the local club that did a goth night cunningly called Underworld that was vampire friendly with air quotes. I had forgiven him for the air quotes that he had put around the vampire friendly, like an overexcited social worker in any situation that you find them. My posit, do I have to explain this shit again? My posit is my werewolf soul. He's a separate entity to me, a wolf soul that has bonded to me. He's been around a few centuries and has been linked to 5 other people. He communicates with me mentally and he's called Fenrir. Yes, there is a reason for that. Someone has already asked, which I will eventually get to. Well, I will. I'm afraid that it'll be sometime in the future, and it's got to do with the Viking times. Aye, no link there to the Northman film, honestly. It had been decided by myself and Fen to go and get these bastards, although I was really struggling with the idea of doing this. This night would change my life forever. I would have the guilt and self-hate linked to this night for the rest of my days. I would struggle with what would have happened for decades. No, it wouldn't be the guilt of killing anyone. I love that shit. I mean, it hurts even to say. I would have to. Oh fuck! I feel sick at this moment. I would have to dress like a goth. I know. I'm sorry. I've put you off your food. Please try to mentally forgive me and carry on with the story. I promise it can get no worse than this. The Underworld nightclub was a club called Jilly's on Oxford Street. I mean, the Underworld night was at the club called Jilly's on Oxford Street. And it was Friday night, which was tonight. So I would have to go shopping today for the clothes. Fen was in his element. His element is taking the piss, and he loved it. I knew that he would be with me today, and it would be hell. I would have to go where the hipsters and goths go, a dark and horrendously scary place for the stylish and suave. People in this particular shopping zone dye their hair and everything and do it themselves. There is classic vinyl and, God forbid, army surplus. This place terrifies me. It is called Affleck's Palace. It is an alternative shopping centre where the alternative people go. This was my hell. Truly my hell. But I would face it in order to whip these fake Draculas. I don't want to go into my shopping trip too much. It is something that I may need to get counselling to rid my mind of the horrors that I saw. I've been pushed to the edge on many occasions, but this was a hell of the highest level. The really scary thing for me is that I think goth women are the hottest thing alive. I really do. The vampire woman who was doing her best to kill me was at least a good 10 out of 10, maybe even an 11. But going into the home of these creatures, not the vampires, that would be easy. Please give me a gloomy tomb in a darkened cemetery any day over an alternative clothing shop staffed by gothic teenagers. I look like their infernal enemy, the straight, cis, white man. And at 47, I would be considered ancient. As I walked into the alternative clothing store, the first line spoken had been spoken to be heard by all in the shop. "Oh fuck, Tammy," came from Sammy between sloppily chewed gum smacks. "Another fucking Mr. Grey. Can you tell him that this isn't a sex shop for me, love?" As you can imagine, this did little for my immediate comfort shopping in said dingy little dive. I assumed that Tammy now played gateway to the shop, twirling her hair in her right hand. Of course, that hair was bad home-dyed pillar box red. "I think you've got the wrong shop, sir," she said, twirling and chewing and judging, "unless you are looking for something for perhaps one of your kids." She finished in a manner that offered that she would be surprised if anyone would want to have children with me. That was it. Fen tore into me and I became the werewolf. I roared my rage and let fly my spittle 2 inches away from her face. She stopped twirling and stopped masticating and fainted in front of me. She was mine, now to rend and tear and destroy. I masticated pale flesh and blood flew. "Are you deaf or something?" she asked. It had been a moment's beautiful dream. Fen pissed himself behind me in hysterics as he saw my heart rate settle and my rage be retarded in front of what looked like a tiny 16-year-old weekend worker. "Okay, Sammy. I am too old, am I? When do you think that goths came about? I assume you class yourself as some goth genre, is that correct?" Sammy nodded and blew a giant pink bubble that popped on her very white face and was expertly returned to her red-lipped mouth by a practiced tongue. "I am a goth, but you would not understand the genre that I particularly follow. You are a bit past it. You know this isn't a sex shop, right?" she said. I wanted to rip the whole building down and kill everyone. I met for the next 2 days. I was that angry at this moment. I looked over at my posit in a slightly begging manner. He just looked back at me and shook his head and said, "Think of the mission." The bastard was loving this. I took some deep breaths. I could see that the young woman was enjoying this to the full, so I would have to take a new tack to win her over. I would have to employ my charm. "Okay," I smiled through gritted teeth. "Get your friends. This will be an education in the genre that you think you are part of." Tammy, Pammy, and fucking Sammy were brought over to listen to the sad old git. They stood as my audience, all chewing gum in black outfits. Only their hair and their tattoos were coloured. Red, blue and green hair was their only discernible difference. I love the fact that these kids do this to be different, yet they wear almost the same exact uniform when together. They had judged me as shit already, but they were willing to listen so that they could take the piss out of me some more. Right, here goes. Feel at ease to ask questions at any point. You may want to get your phones out or notebooks to write this shit down, I said. "When did goth begin?" I asked my audience. I pointed at them each in turn and was waiting for them to hopefully not say what I knew. Pammy smiled. Has to be the Cure, isn't it? They were the first of the goth bands now. A pretty good answer given in an unexpected Cockney accent. A goth shouldn't really have a Cockney accent. No, whichever Amy you are, Pammy. A good try, but the Cure is a recent band that followed this genre. Bauhaus, another one snapped in between mastications. Nope, wrong again. Bauhaus is a good guess, but they found their inspiration from bands before that, I answered. The last Amy looked interested now. Was it Pammy? I pointed at her, waiting for her guess, but she gave me a wave. A very unsubtle way of telling me to move on, and that she would allow me to continue. I got my phone out and went to YouTube, where I looked up Screaming Jay Hawkins. This 1956 classic, Put a Spell on You, is proto-goth in so many ways. The song deals with witchcraft, making someone love them through magic, and was him jumping out of a coffin wearing a cape. This would be the start of gothic, darker sides of music in pop. America saw this song as so sinful and satanic that he would be banned from the charts. Even banned from the radio, this song still sold in the millions to an audience turned on to his tune and theatrics. The music is dark and messed up and not like anything of that time that was successful. He actually recorded it so drunk that he was blacked out and doesn't remember doing it. He was also black. There you go. A black goth started it all. I bowed and brought their uninspired attention to the screen. They stood, chewed, and sneered. Knowing a little about teenage girls, not in a weird way, before you worry, I only eat them, I never think of doing anything more. I knew this meant that they were impressed slightly, enough to let me continue. Halfway through the song, I stopped it. 3 pairs of overly eyeshadowed eyes came to mind, and a beautiful sentence then came from one of the clones. What happened next then? I had them now. I smiled at the posit whose laughter had stopped. It had been replaced by a face of displeasure at what was happening. He would be gutted if I taught him a way out of this. Following this, we then moved to 1967. It's a long gap, and a band called The Doors. Oh, I know that one, said Amy. The lead singer was so fucking hot. What was he called? He was Gavin Morrison's. I cringed at the wrong name, but held it together enough to tell her the truth. Jim Morrison, and he was boiling hot. I daringly winked. They released a self-titled album with sweeping organ riffs and Spanish guitar melodies that are about as a goth can be. Jim's deeply droning vocals became a mainstay of all gothic music for a long time. I looked to my now growing audience to see if they were still with me. They were, wrapped in the lecture. Let us look at one particular song. This is the End. It was originally 3 minutes long and about a breakup between Morrison and his girlfriend. I YouTubed the classic song and had it play in the background as I continued my speech. After playing it almost every night in the Whiskey A Go-Go nightclub, it became 11 minutes of powerful darkness linked to suicide and the loss of friends. This was the first band ever to make it into Rolling Stone or any kind of press as gothic rock. Look at Jim's self-destructive, nihilistic lifestyle. So goth. More goths had joined the pack, listening before me. Let me just quote the great Jim Morrison about this song. What would we give this quote, out of a gothic 10? It is strange that they fear death. Life hurts a lot more than death. At the point of death, the pain is over. Yeah, I guess it is a friend. Jim Morrison. Everyone took an intake of breath, and some little pink-headed spherically shaped goth said, "That's pure beauty, that is." "Do you want me to carry on?" I asked as they pulled their eyes from Jim's leather trousers and now looked at me in wonder. This old man knew his shit. I took it by the silence, apart from the chewing, that they did want me to continue, so I did my usual and filled the uncomfy moment with verbal shite. Now, we move on to the Velvet Underground and Lou Reed in 1967. Let us just look at some of the titles of the songs on the album. Heroin and The Black Angel's Death Song. How goth are those names? Let us look at the topics of some of these songs on top of the names. Topics that had never been touched before. Venus in Furs is so BDSM and dark sex that it hurts. Then on top of that we have the weirdly strange lyricist Nico. She was a rare thing at the time. A German singer who was a riffing goddess with haunting, rounded vocals. Some people compared her to a human cello. I had found Venus in Furs and let them listen to it as I spoke. They had now all crowded around my phone and were glued to its content. A customer had been trying to get attention for a good 10 minutes but was being thoroughly ignored so that the girls could get the education that they required. "She's beautiful though, she ain't no goth," one of the girls said. "Ah, I see where you're coming from, but she's actually the ultimate goth woman. In this video she looks like the perfect blonde Barbie doll." I agree, but all will become clear. She then left the Velvet Underground and released her own album in 1968 called The Marble Index. It is depressing as fuck. The song Frozen Warnings brings absolute chills to the spine. I found the song for them on my phone and they gathered like piglets to their mother's breast, wanting to be fed more knowledge. She was the first true goth girl. She was sick of being used as this hot blonde bombshell to sell her music. She wanted the music to stand alone, so she started to alter her look to alternative. I pointed at one of the Amis and got a smile and nod as a reaction. She wanted to only dress in black, and she dyed her hair blood red. She did not want to look, what was the usual pretty, so she became the first goth girl. A deep intake once more, an admiring susurration of voices. I knew there would be another 10 Nico posters on the wall before 8 p.m. tonight. The album itself, Marble Index, is only 13 songs long and less than 30 minutes in length. It's so short because the producer working with her had to walk out 13 songs in because he found the song so depressing he actually wanted to kill himself. "That's fucking goth," one of my little herds said. "Okay, do you want more?" I asked. "Yes, please," they droned in wide-eyed wonder. Okay, a little left field with the next character in The Birth of Goth, but I think he was a really important player in it all. We're talking, obviously, about the legend that is Alice Cooper. There was a mixed commotion in this because they would find what some sees as a bit of a metal clown to be not cool enough to be a goth. You may reflect on him now as being a little passé, but he was a terrifying figure that frightened America with his lyrics and antics in that time. Our man Jay Hawkins heavily influenced his stage show, and his theatrical nature was bona fide goth, with makeup and all black clothing being seen here as him acting a part. His gigs were crazy and scary and often ended him with faking his suicide or murder. As for his songs, well, they are mental. You wouldn't be able to get away with them now. He had one song called Dead Babies, and as he sang it, he used an axe to chop up a baby doll. How many number one artists could get away with that bullshit in this modern woke world? I had the live on stage version of Alice chopping up a baby doll to his singing on my phone. My audience was just hooked. Weirdos. I stopped the video and smiled. They looked at me. I was their now heroine, and they needed me to continue. Okay, I will continue, but you're not going to like where I'm going to go with this. I know, just calm down. I have to point my fingers at glam rock. Whoa, calm down. There was a look of hurt, shock, and a sound of slight disgust from my audience. Yes, I know it's all glittery and colourful shit, but before the new wave and punk, it was the first time that people, men mainly, wore makeup and had, how can I say it, girly outfits, and it was okay. It was important. It really was. Roxy Music was one of these bands, and they were not glittery and stuff. Listen to this. I got my phone and I played them. Every dream has a heartache. The gaggle of goths had now turned into a number of goths of different pronouns, and they were all avidly listening. This was new to them, to find their history in music, the shit they had wished they had learnt at school. Now, we move on to music I respectfully ask you to listen to with caution. My warning was taken with nods from the crowd. Brian Eno in 1974 went far from the norm. I will not bring them up to listen to now, but have a listen to the two songs, Blank Frank and Third Uncle. I mean, Bauhaus covered Third Uncle, and they're very scary. Bowie and Eno then came together to create the Berlin Album's post-glam rock. If you don't like Bowie, then there's something wrong with you, just wrong. The Cure says that album Low that Eno and Bowie produced, one of them, is their favourite album ever. That says a lot. The crowd had grown again, and people were now taking notes and asking what they'd missed. Then there was punk. Now, we need to kind of look at the boundaries of punk, and New York Suicide, now that is a band. They first actually claimed the title punk themselves. They were loved and hated due to their name and lack of guitars and drums, which they replaced with electronic instruments. This is weird enough, but then there are the songs. Now, it's been remarked that these songs should only be listened to once because they are really fucked up. I love them personally, but I've been told that normal humans, I mean non-goths of course, not werewolves, I quickly added. Okay, listen to Frankie Teardrop, that's one of the songs, and realise the story that it tells. If that is not goth, then nothing is. You should be kneeling down on the dance floor, crying with your fingerless gloves on and making your mascara run to that tune. It tells the story of a working man who is so poor that he doesn't know how to cope and feed his family, so get this, he kills his wife and his kids and then himself. Super dark. I could smell the crowd getting aroused at this, but mobile phones were already searching. They were sick bastards too. Next we have The Cramps, 1977. Psycho Billy. This is the Human Fly's time, an amazing song where he came across as a human fly singing. We actually see goths now celebrating monster madness in film. AFI followed, Misfits, The Damned, all horror punk. Then punk took the glam rock style further. Wearing anything that you wanted now was cool. Having your hair in any way was now cool. Punk and glam and the coming new wave meant that goths became an acceptable way to dress. Well, kind of acceptable. Post-punk, we're now starting to see the reality. There was Susie and the Banshees, true goth and amazing, and you better have heard of them. They're actually Robert Smith's favourite band. He's the lead singer of The Cure, if you are completely stupid. Then we see it. The first actual goth bands happened, and we have Bauhaus. I pointed at one of the Amis. In 1979, Bela Lugosi's Dead was goth music. Droning dub reggae guitars, scratchy crap drums. The song is about vampires. I think that is it. We will leave it there. If you don't know how it goes from Bauhaus onwards, you need to turn in your black clothes, wash out the dye from your hair, and become a normie. The crowd, now somewhat larger, stood looking at me. There was a lot of consideration going on, a lot of cheering, and a lot of reconsidering thoughts. Various little groups stood around various smartphones listening to various bands and various tunes that I mentioned in my short lecture. Sammy stood staring at me. She blew another bubble and it popped, and the broken bubble was returned to her mouth, again, deftly with her tongue. I felt like I was awaiting some kind of judgment, and finally it came. Sammy came over to me and held out her hand to take mine. As I took her hand, she turned and took me into the shop. Okay, I'm not going to go into the shopping, but I have a genuine question here. Why do women look so good and sexy and amazing in goth kit? Why do even androgynous males look so good? I mean, the ones that look a lot feminine. As an older man, and I have to say a good-looking older man, these clothes make you look like a dick. Keanu Reeves could just about carry it off, this look and look okayish. But Jesus, I look like a complete tool. I ended up with black jeans, a see-through t-shirt and long leather jacket to cover the crap. I had to buy fingerless gloves and a few studded bangles as a homage to my musical taste in the 80s. But that was it. I would wear this and that would be it. Goth men's outfits are just shit. Goth femmes rule. I left Affleck's Palace feeling slightly better about life, knowing that I would look like an extra from Blade. I noticed 2 people were following me as I went into Affleck's Palace, and they'd actually joined me in my lecture group during my chat. Then the 2 of them now followed me from the Palace of Goth. These people had linked to vampires in some way. I knew this because they had shades on during a normal grey Manchester rainy day. They must have been sent to follow me or something, who knows, but it gave me an appropriate outlet for my peeved nature. Who did they think they were? I was an expert in fieldcraft, so these individuals stood out like sore thumbs. They had no idea how to do the following thing they were trying to do. I set the posit behind the 2 of them to keep an eye on them. Why were they being so obvious? I wandered back to the car park on Tib Street where I'd parked the Defender. I'd found a nice little ginnel to nip down on the way there. If these guys were trained, then they would definitely not follow me. They would be Google mapping the exits and contacting someone knowing that they had been compromised. New people would then replace them to carry on the tracking. That is how it's done. You have many and various people do the following so that none are easily recognisable. If they were shit, they would follow me without thought, and that would be it. Sadly, they were half bright, and only one of them followed me. I stood behind a substantial silver waste bin for the Raymond shop on the main street, judging by the smell. The guy following was a noob as he wandered past my hiding place indifferently. As he wandered by, I whistled and he froze. He was tall and skinny, in skinny black jeans and a skinny death metal t-shirt and a skinny black denim jacket. His hair was shoulder length and black, and his skin was as pale can be. He turned slowly when he should have run. I was close enough to pull his glasses from his eyes as he froze on the spot. Fear is a beautiful thing to me. We see so many kinds of reactions to it. He stopped breathing and clenched. He clenched everything. I gripped the scruff of his mop at the back of his head and brought myself nose to nose with him. His eyes were filled with mine, and the monkey in him screamed and yelled at his treatment. He, however, floundered, unable to do anything. Then his eye movement betrayed him. They flicked to his friend that I had already noticed creeping up on me some time ago in what he thought was silence. He did not realise my senses were so much better than his. He also did not realise that my posit had told me about him a few minutes ago, hiding at the entrance to the ginnel. "Will, there's another knobhead behind you," he had mentally told me. I held the man, now fixed with nothing but a stare. Fen warned me that the guy behind me had picked something up from the bins and he was raising his arm about to strike me from behind. I smiled at the boy in my hand and simultaneously slammed his head into the brickwork on the right-hand side of the alley, where it smashed with an exciting sound of a popping coconut. I swear it did, it sounded just like it. With my left hand, I span and grabbed the wrist of the other protagonist and wrenched on it, feeling it snap in my hand. The greasy length of metal he had in his hand fell to the ground with the peal of a poorly tuned bell, as the now dead body behind me against the wall just slipped to the floor. The living boy was about to scream in pain, so I shoved my hand over his mouth and pushed him back to the wall. I held him there, his shoulders were pinned to the rough surface, his leather biker jacket protecting him initially from my push against the wall. I again moved in closer and removed his sunglasses with my other hand. The kid was yelling a muffled scream due to his mouth being covered, and I held him there waiting for his energy to emit noise to go. Slowly he became silent. He could not keep my eye contact and was staring down at the ground, shivering and hiccuping as I cupped his chin and smiled. "Did the vampires send you, wee man?" I asked. He looked at me and tried to show some bravery that I appreciated. "I asked you whether or not the vampires had sent you." I asked him again, lifting him bodily, Darth Vader style, and shaking him. "Look, the likelihood is I am going to kill you." I nodded in the direction of the dead man in the alley. "Like him. He is proper dead. You can tell that by the way that some of his head and skull are on the wall. There is some on the floor over there, and the rest is in the puddle that he's sitting in. That tends to mean that someone is dead. Even your fangified fucking friends that you love don't survive that shit. I ask you one more time, did the vampires send you?" He nodded. "Okay. Have you reported to them what I've been up to?" He shook his head, and I knew I could believe him at this moment. He was willing to be as honest could be. "See, now that's a shame, because I want to keep my shopping spree a little private." His eyes widened and he tried to talk through the covered mouth. "No. I have to stop you from being able to tell them anything. Now, there is a couple of ways I can do this. I'm going to give you a choice. Number one, listen to me, is to kill you. I mean, it's the simplest way for me to make sure that those bastards never find out what you know, unless they can speak to the dead. I'm not sure about that. Maybe I should not have killed him over. Can they listen to dead folk, do you know?" He shook his head again. With like vampire powers and stuff. I asked a little shaking man. He shook his head in a manner that I took that he was saying I don't know instead of no. The other thing that I could do is cripple you so that you cannot communicate with the bastards. That will involve me destroying your lower jaw. I will make sure that it can heal, maybe. Don't give a shit, really, because I only need 24 hours for my plan to work. Also, oh shit, I would have to smash your hands up as well so you can't write. That would heal too, but they probably won't be as good as they were. And I can tell from the calluses you play a lot of guitar, so that might not be the greatest outcome from you. But look at the original heavy metal guitarist Tony Iommi, Black Sabbath. He had a plastic finger and he was one of the all-time greats. Your hands are probably worse than that. The guy did not hear anything that I was saying. I think his ability to understand and deal with what was happening had gone, probably due to him looking at his dead friend. Ah, fuck it. I smiled, snapped his neck with a flip of my fingers. He died instantly and I dropped the body. I saw a flash on the rooftop out the corner of my eye. Shit. There was someone with a camera or binoculars or something. Ah, shit. This was all a setup. This had been a nice distraction. I had to think that the vampires might be now prepared for me to come to the club. I looked at Fen and he looked at me and we both started laughing. This was going to be even more fun than I thought. They would get a chance to set a trap and I would walk straight and deep into it to see what would happen. I might die. I just might. But this shit is actually what I live for. I wouldn't die though. I knew I would not. I would not be seen dead, dressed in goth clothes. Thank you. Please like and subscribe, comment, ring the bell, share. Please, it would be wonderful. Love you lots. Bye.